conversation with.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining in today. I'm Priyanshi from Artisans, and today I have Oorja Garg with us. Oorja and I met in Surat in exhibition that we had at Tapi Festival, and since then we are in touch and we have done a couple of projects together. And yeah, I'm incredibly excited to have you here. So thank you so much for doing this for us. Urja is an art historian, writer, and independent curator. She did her post-graduation in art history and aesthetics from Maharaja Sayaji Rao University of Baroda. She's a founder of an independent curatorial platform called Gillehri Arts Initiative. Her inquiry resides in how visuals for mass consumption result from and shape the popular consciousness that defines cultural identities concerning nation, class, caste, and gender. She's also one of the founding members of Feminists in Solidarity. So we welcome you, Urja. Thank you for doing this for us, and we shall dive in the session. For those of you who do not know, Urja did a previous talk on mapping the gender through school educational charts, and I will link that down in the description box. So, Urja, I'm quite curious how your research has evolved since then.
Well, Priyanshi, first of all, thank you for this wonderful round of introductions. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to come up at your platform and talk about my research and my journey. Also, I think coming from a limited experience, since it's only been a year or something that I've graduated, mm, I will be speaking from my limited experience in the field. And yes, I'll try my best to answer your questions. And to start with the first one, um, my research. All right. So, see, I have been working on popular culture from, let's say, 3 years now. And in my master's, I started researching, reading scholars like Sumati Ramaswamy, Patricia Oberoi, Christopher Pini, and many, many more. I think my inquiry always resided in the everyday use of visuals across our country, across India, that have sort of bound us together and highlighted certain normalized aspects of the popular imagery that we're surrounded by. So you would walk on the street and you would see certain signs that would be recognizable by everybody who lives in the particular time and space. And it's something that instantly people would recognize. It's not something that generally the aura of high art or you say the galleries or the museums, you won't really find popular culture in those, even though in 21st century popular art has been recognized as a genre of art, and include in its inclusion in museums and galleries has been quite astonishing. And I think starting with pop art movement of the 1960s, it's gained in its importance in even the contemporary art movement. I would say that when I started working on educational charts, it was something that bound all of us together. It was something that we all saw in our childhood, and the students continue to use those charts to learn. And it's something that easily takes you back into your memory lane and induces a sort of nostalgia. So when I came across these charts, and as an art historian, I just felt that I had to see what lies within them to sort of unravel the structures that and dogmas about gender and class and nation that are taught to us since we were children. And they are a product of maybe they're of course a product of British hybrid nation that we've become because of our post-colonial identity. There's also a greater influence of the freedom movement which began in the 1900s, when people like Abhinandanathan Tagore, people like Rabindranath Tagore just started writing about our nation, and then Gandhi and all of those socio-political circumstances that framed what was taught uh, in the educational institutions, which were actually for the first time built after, which were given autonomy, not built, which were given autonomy apart from the British rule during the same time as our freedom struggle began. So I think they've just continued in the post-independent era. And my inquiry at that time resided in unraveling how they have been influenced by so many socio-political economic factors that existed before independence and sort of seeped in post-independence, um, also conforming to the particular time and ethos of building India and finding India's identity as a nation, as an independent nation. So it's very crucial to understand that, what do you imbibe in the younger generation? So to speak, that, what is the legacy that you'll pass on to them, and what is the identity that you would be framing in front of the whole world of a nation like India? And so I started looking at the charts through the lens of gender for the first time. And as you see, there were charts, there were a lot of problems in the charts that I've highlighted in my papers. I think I've written two, three papers on gender and educational charts, and one on nationalism in educational charts, and how this whole idea of Hindutva is being propagated through those charts. And it's I don't know, it's really sad that they're still in print and they're still being used in educational institutions, especially government schools. I think there has been an increasing awareness of the use of these charts, but it's still a long way to go. And I think my research could maybe help, maybe bring those ideas to the surface.
Okay, yeah. So have you so you have been doing a lot of paintings these days. So is it something that is a continuation of your research, or it's a little bit like different from what you are doing since back
Oh
then?
well, I I don't I don't really think that, see, educational charts have been a part of my journey, and I would say that they fascinate me. But my work is more, I think, as a contemporary artist, my way of looking at certain things of the popular culture, the shift. I do look at popular culture, and having read about educational charts, the first thing I was supposed to do was learn about how people have actually studied popular culture and mass imagery, mass production throughout the time, and how to analyze them. So there's this critical bent of mind that you develop when you read certain scholars and certain papers on the topic. But when it comes to finding an art expression, it gets quite it's a different take. It's stemming from there, definitely, but it's entirely a different take when I sort of express my self in that. Not only it's not only a singular opinion that I'm giving about. Well, it's something that I can't really describe in words right now, but
Yeah.
definitely has to do with the critique of the capitalist structure and the dogmas that it, of course, spreads, and also breaking the boundary of how we perceive uh, a certain visual. So, for example, if you see a billboard, it's supposed to put you into action. It's supposed to bring in that drive in you to buy that product. And it's similar with every ad. Nowadays you see Instagram. Most of the people are on their social medias, and you scroll down, and after every four posts there will be an ad, and it propels you to buy. And there's a different sort of marketing strategy altogether that Instagram uses versus what we see in a TV ad and what versus what we see in a billboard. But all of them, they drive you to buy something, to do something, and eventually, the successfulness or the success of that particular ad is counted by the number of views or clicks or purchases made through that particular ad. So turning almost turning human beings as products almost. So we are the products of that capitalist structure. At the end of the day, it's not the product that is capitalist. It's we have also been turned into products because of this whole system. And I try to uh, turn my works into products uh, that can be I don't know if that makes sense, but actually turning my works into products by using the same visual aesthetics that is used by popular imagery, driving people, propelling them, to do something. But when they look inside, it's actually gibberish. It doesn't mean anything. It's just jumbled text and forms that don't mean anything exactly. And yeah, so people often ask me, what have you tried to make here? I say nothing. I don't have words to talk about it because it's just an idea. It's just a thought that, okay, you look for something in those bright colors, but ultimately you find nothing.
Yeah, to me, it seemed a little bit inspired from the popular culture as well because it looks very poster-like, something coming from the Priyesh Trivedi charts sort of thing. But then there is like this very gibberish. There's this visual, the colors, the style, the way you have painted. Yeah, so it definitely does make sense. But yeah, but I'm not sure because like if we think that our works are like products, so then what all the galleries do is something similar. If you are a gallerist or a museum, for you all these lifelong paintings and lifelong works of these incredible artists are products for you. So coming to the galleries point, I would like to know more about your experiences because you did a online show last year at Gillehri Arts Initiative, and after that there were many other shows as well. And I know there were like the approaches were quite different. So something you would like to share in terms of different experiences, different approaches, some insights regarding that would be helpful.
So when I curated my first exhibition, which was during the pandemic last year, and at that time I just wanted to create a platform that would um, create a dialogue amongst the community and join in or group people together from different communities, different areas of life, who could come to one place and talk. And hence the curation was more of an experiment where people would come in and throw in their ideas rather than me selecting a particular works for exhibition. So I feel it was more like an artists collective, an initiative by the artists, because I think they were the ones to curate their own works. And you being a part of it, I think I would also like to know how you felt about it. So I think mostly Gilleri was an intervention into artistic practices. And I just, I was quite free and I just asked the artist to tell me about certain works that they resonate with. And it could be related to any personal memory they have, or an archive, or a particular memory with creation of a particular work for that matter. And uh, and that led to a lot of interventions in terms of the medium also, and a question about of how to exhibit different kinds of art on an online platform. So we had photo performances, we had video performances, we had video works, we had installation works, we had paintings, we had sculptures. So everything at one place you would find, and it was quite interactive. And how the layout of a blog was explored independently. Instead of a website, it was a blog that we created, and experimenting with a blog platform to draw in audience. I think it was quite interesting and I enjoyed myself a lot throughout the process.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it was, I mean, during that time, as far as I remember, it was like a sense of community that I felt. And currently, all sorts of curations and all the shows are happening on online platforms, okay? And Gilleri was one of it that we did. But it was very different in terms of approach, considering all the other shows happening around, because there is like this super hierarchical structure that we follow. But with Gilleri, it was very different because the artists themselves had to curate one of their own works, or a set of works, or a set of series, and then you sort of uh, assembled it and put it up in the blog. So there was a sort of organizing of a certain show, but at the same time, your role as a curator, like your approach as a curator, was like finding these artists who had some sort of similar language. There's something that they can have a conversation about. Because to me, apparently, it felt like uh, the the particular aim about gathering them was to create a dialogue and communicate, because what happens in galleries is like people do not often get time to discuss about how deep their works are. It's just about pinpointing stuff. But here you have your own time, you can revisit the exhibitions, and since there was a descriptory description about all these like individual works and the journeys and the process, I think they kind of gave more space and time. So to me, it kind of helped in that sense. But comparing it to a gallery, say for example, you did a show at PS3 or probably with Kochi Binale, your approach might would have been different because you were under, or you were working with someone, you collaborated with something. So in terms of that, I'm pretty sure there has to be some sort of different experience, right?
Yeah, I curated Untitled 7 for PS3 Gallery, and there was a portrait museum that I assisted artist Archana Honde with. I think I didn't see much of a difference when in the process uh, in which Archana Hande was curating and I had curated Gilleri at that point of time, because what I wanted to generate through Gilleri was something similar that even Archana wanted to do in her curation. So when she talked about the portrait and different trajectories of perceiving a portrait, and they were academic works of portraits. They were portrait in the sense of memory archiving, and how different archives would inform identity and would behave like a portrait of a person. Then there was gender, then there was the everyday life of people, their rituals, that the communities where they come from, that sort of talks about their portrait. And so redefining, there was a complete redefining of the word portrait. And to me, that was quite exciting, because that's what I wanted to do with Gilleri. Because when I talked about memory, and memory as an entity that is so universal that everybody has it, not only the artist but everybody around. It's something that is so uh, universal, and so much ingrained in all of our blueprints, that you know to talk about memory in a very in a very literal way is very difficult. So what are the different trajectories that the idea of memory can imbibe in a person, can make an artist to think about their own practice, and then come up with a set of works and a curation that would best describe how their practice is linked to memory. So, for that matter, I think your practice, when you were talking about, when you created this whole doll called Stitch and another character altogether, and you know, you did photo performances, by hugging that doll that you had created, by putting that doll into various spaces, various different spaces. I think that is something that the context that you brought it out, at that time, by using a doll, as a doll as a fetish, a doll as something that we sleep with when we're children. So enticing a memory of and nostalgia of certain time period, and yet talking about it as a fetish that grows much much beyond than the simple act of sleeping with a doll, but how you associate feelings with an object that is non-living, and how that causes certain psychological effects in a person. So that little trajectory that you shaped, and similarly other artists like Powell's work for that matter, when she was borrowing from this children uh, alphabet book. It's called Akhar Bodh, and it was written in the Gurmukhi script of Punjabi, which is almost dead now, because there's this homogenized version of Punjabi that is taught in schools now. So Gurmukhi is almost a lost script, and she talking about Gurmukhi in a times like this when the religious atmosphere of India is so volatile, because Gurmukhi is something that died after this whole homogenization process and the unity in diversity project started, which is also very politically charged, because was India ever a democracy, or was it ever united uh, in the way, because the partition happened and subsequently we got our freedom. So the whole foundation of India and Pakistan was built on religion. So when she's talking about a language that is dying or is already dead, and her migration from Pakistan to India, it all brings in that sort of memory of a cultural memory of partition, and her own memory through that of dealing with the language, of wanting to speak a particular language that belonged to her community at certain point of time when they were in Pakistan, but something that is lost due to this socio-political turmoil that the country was faced with. And hence, finding, for example, Sneha Lakhotia, Mosham, all of these people, they talked about their personal memories of loss and losing their loved ones, and hence they talked about works that they created in the memory um, of their loved ones, and so that becomes an important trajectory for one to understand the idea of memory. And hence there were so many such interventions when people talked about a particular object they associated with, a particular space they associated with, and how they've put in those objects and spaces in their works of art to talk about how they feel about memory. It was something that interested me because it didn't change the process of how they worked. It didn't really make them do anything else. It just propelled them and pushed them, nudged them, I think, to think of about their works in terms of memory. And I think that's what a curation does. It's not something that defines a work of art. It's not something that, according to me, gives that credibility to the work of art, that okay, this is a credible work of art. For me, curation is something that brings people together. It brings the artists together, it brings the institution together, it brings the audience together to one platform where they can actually interact with each other, actually, develop a relationship that, they for an instant, that that they all are in the same place together communicating with each other. And that's what a curation does for me. And finding its relevance in a particular space and time, that that that's extremely crucial to any curatorial process. To It's a process. It's not, again, I would say it's not something that is a singular entity. It's not just about exhibiting works. It's about how those works interact with each other, and how you can sort of build on that dialogue. And I think a curator's role is just writing the first line of a huge essay. It's just a small direction that they give, that this is how these works can also be interpreted in in that coming together, in that bringing of people together.
Yeah, very well said. So, like going back to your research practice, the group that um, we all founded, like together, the Feminist in Solidarity. To me, it seems like an action plan of the research that you did. if you want to talk about it, we can. How the idea came up and um, how the actions and how what we are doing in it.
Yeah. So feminist in solidarity also was something that came out of the pandemic, and I think during that time, a lot of us were struggling inside our households with issues that we could overlook if we were working or doing something in our daily lives, but pandemic gave that time frame and that space for a lot of um, you know thoughts and marginalization coming up front that was not visible at that at certain points. So even if they were, I think there were people around to talk to, and a lot of women face this. And I just thought that again there has to be a community which is there. It's 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 a it's a collective, it's a collective energy that has to come together, um, of women who share the same experiences because of their gender, because it's the experience of marginalization that they so feel in their everyday lives, that there has to be, this need to communicate was something that I felt, that since I felt a lot of women must be feeling, um, that space where you would be understood, you would be, um, you would not be a stranger, you would fit in, you would not be marginalized, your voice would matter. And that is what I wanted to do, to give that voice to lots of other women around from the same community. Or we have women from across the country now. It started with me. I added five. I think you were the first ones, or the founding member of Gilleri too. And I think I just came up with you one day and I just told you, Priyanshi, would you like to be in a group where women just come together and talk to each other? And I think you readily said yes. And just like you, I think there were lots of other women who just readily said yes. Oh yes, we want a space like that where we can talk, where we can express freely, where we can actually belong. And I think that's what feminist and solidarity is. It just is a platform that wants to create that belongingness amongst women coming from different parts of the country. And we started with 5 7 members, and now we're 40. And I feel so proud that there's something that binds us together. We did a lot of readings of feminist writers like Kamala Das, Nivedita Menon. And I think those were important points of intersection, because we got to know so much about each other, our lives, and also our thoughts, and how we related, each of us, to those texts that we read. And also, I think there was also a point where we started this series called Anonymous Confessions, where uh, we knew the names because, of course, it was a WhatsApp group over which the confessions were shared. But eventually, we did. Started posting them also as anonymous confessions. It was heartbreaking to see so many women having suffered such tremendous losses. And I think that was very, I think, what is art? It's something that happens in an everyday life. And even though I think most of the community members are artists in the group, so it's of course an artist collective, I would say. And nonetheless, whether um, they're artists or not, I think that sort of dialogue about um, coming from different women who might not know each other and just freely expressing themselves is something that everybody requires.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Unja. So, how curators approach the gallery, how they collaborate with artists or other curators, or how these kind of like the whole assembly of the curators and artists and the galleries work out.
Oh, so since I work with a gallery, it was it was a short interview that I gave to the gallery once I sent my resume, and I'm doing a job with the gallery. And as an independent curator, I never approached a gallery. I think the gallery approached me once, and that is how it has been for me. But if you do want to approach a gallery, make sure you have a contact in the gallery. Otherwise, nobody actually. Galleries get hundreds of emails every day, and we don't have time to look at each one of them. Hundreds of portfolios we get of artists, and some of them just like keep on lying down in our emails, and we're not able to respond. So if better you have a contact with somebody within the gallery, so that it's easier for you to be seen by the gallery. Another thing is that I think for artists, it's very necessary to make sure that they have made their portfolios right with exact, titles and dates and sizes and mediums of the works, and make sure that you focus on the presentation of your works as much as you do in making your works of art, because that makes our work a lot more easier, and our selection process very easy, because if you have all the things ready at one place with a crisp artist statement, we don't want lengthy ones, 200 words max. And I think that really helps us to figure out whether you would be the right fit. And generally, the way we go forward is that we would contact you and schedule a meeting with you. And these days, I think with Anant, we've done approximately 70 to 80 studio visits in during the last pandemic until now. So we've met a lot of artists and the practices, and yes, it's quite a selection process that you have to bear. But nonetheless, I don't think that one should define themselves or their artistic practice in terms of how the gallery views their practice, because there are some works better suited for experimental sort of approaches. I think different galleries have their own aesthetics of promoting certain kind of works. So what gallery you send your works to has to be also be known. So you have to understand how a gallery works as an institution to be able to send your works. I mean, if you send certain uh, politically charged works to a gallery that does not indulge in politically charged works, then you're wasting your time and you're wasting their time by sending it. So make sure that you study the gallery to who you're sending your works to. So yeah, I think that's very important. Two things: clean portfolio and study the gallery.
Okay. So thank you so much, Urja, for doing this for us. It has been an incredibly insightful session.
Thank you.